Welcome to this special explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the absolute most powerful and enduring narratives from Indian mythology. We're talking about a story that has been passed down for literally millennia, serving as the ultimate, unbeatable benchmark for truth and righteousness. We're going to explore the legendary king of Ayodhya, a man whose name has practically become synonymous with absolute honesty. So get ready, because the story of King Harishchandra is going to test everything you think you know about duty, sacrifice, and the sheer, crushing weight of keeping your word.
But before we get into all the mythological details, I want you to really stop and think about something for a second. How far would you honestly go to keep a promise? I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as pretty honest people, right? But what if telling the truth cost you your job? What if it cost you your home? Or what if it literally demanded the sacrifice of your own family, or even your freedom? Hooking into this narrative really requires us to understand that we are dealing with extreme, almost unimaginable stakes here. This isn't just some simple fable about not telling lies. It's a profound, intense exploration of absolute, unyielding commitment to a promise.
So our story centers on King Harishchandra. He belonged to the illustrious Suryavamsa, which is the solar dynasty, and he ruled over the majestic city of Ayodhya during the Treta Yuga, an ancient epic in Hindu cosmology. And according to the ancient texts, he was famous across both the mortal and celestial realms for one huge defining characteristic: his absolute, unwavering refusal to ever tell a lie. He wasn't just a good king, you guys. He was the very embodiment of truth. But, well, as we know from any great story, having an absolute virtue is basically a magnet for the ultimate test.
This legendary integrity sparks a massive cosmic debate that sets the whole thing in motion. Picture this: the celestial court of Lord Indra, just packed with gods and sages. On one side, you have the great sage Vashishta, and he's just loudly praising Harishchandra's unmatched integrity. He's saying the king is totally incorruptible. But on the other side is the incredibly formidable sage Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra, he's highly skeptical. He argues that, at the end of the day, human beings are fundamentally flawed, and maintaining absolute truthfulness is simply impossible if you put them under enough pressure. So, right there in front of everyone, in the heavenly court, Vishwamitra makes a high-stakes wager. He vows to test the king and break his legendary commitment to truth.
Vishwamitra does not waste a single second. He descends straight down to earth, approaches King Harishchandra, and issues his challenge. Though, to be fair, he disguises it as a simple request. He demands the king's entire kingdom as a dana, which is a charitable donation, supposedly to fund a grand yagya, or sacred fire ritual. Now, for any normal king, this would be an absolutely outrageous demand. You'd laugh him out of the palace. But Harishchandra, bound by his strict code of honor and his promise to always serve sages, just agrees. With a single word, he gives away his magnificent empire, his wealth, his status, the whole shebang. He surrenders it all without even a second thought, just to keep his word.
But Vishwamitra's challenge very quickly builds into an inescapable trap. First, the king surrenders the kingdom. Okay, done. But Vishwamitra isn't finished. He carefully points out that, according to tradition, a grand donation has to be accompanied by a dakshina, a monetary fee given to the priest. Boom. The trap springs completely shut. Harishchandra has literally just given away every single piece of his wealth and land. He has absolutely nothing left to pay this dakshina. So, completely forced into a corner by his own blinding integrity, the once great king is reduced to begging the sage for a 1-month grace period to somehow, some way, find the money to pay off this final debt.
Stripped of his royal robes, his palace, and his power, Harishchandra actually has to depart from Ayodhya. He leaves with his only remaining treasures in the whole world: his devoted wife, Queen Chandramati, and his young son, Lohithasya. The text tells us they journey to the holy city of Kashi, and this journey itself is just brutal. It's this sudden, jarring plunge from unimaginable luxury to absolute rock-bottom poverty. They aren't walking towards Kashi as royalty on some fun pilgrimage. They're walking as desperate individuals racing against a 1-month deadline to pay off a massive cosmic debt.
The sheer devastation of his predicament forces an unthinkable choice. With that 1-month deadline looming and literally zero money to his name, Harishchandra upholds his dharma by doing the unimaginable. He sells his beloved wife Chandramati and his young son Lohithasya into servitude to a wealthy Brahmin. And when that still isn't enough money to clear the debt, he sells himself, purchased by a man named Veerabahu, the great glorious king of Ayodhya, is reduced to working as a lowly crematorium guard.
And just when you think the universe literally cannot punish this man any further, tragedy strikes. While serving his new master out in the forest, young Loa-Thiasia is sent out to gather darba grass for a ritual. And out there in the dense brush, the boy is fatally bitten by a venomous snake. The heir to the Solar Dynasty dies alone in the dirt, living as a slave gathering grass. The emotional weight of this moment in the source material is just immense. It's a real turning point, the exact moment where the story shifts from a brutal test of material loss to a test of unimaginable emotional endurance.
Actually, let's just pause right here for a second and take this in. A grieving, completely destitute Chandramathi finds her dead son in the forest. Sobbing and broken, she carries his lifeless body through the dark to the local crematorium to perform the final rites. And guess who is guarding that exact crematorium? Her husband, King Harishchandra. I want you to really put yourself in his shoes. The universe has violently stripped you of everything, and now your wife stands before you holding your dead child. What do? Do you finally bend the rules? Do you abandon this incredibly strict adherence to duty for the sake of basic human compassion and your own family's profound grief?
So, the absolutely crucial point here is how he reacts. Harishchandra recognizes his wife. He sees the lifeless body of his own flesh and blood. His heart is undoubtedly shattering into a million pieces. Yet, he steps forward and firmly states, no cremation can occur without the Kadisunkam. He actually demands the mandatory cremation tax. You see, he is a servant to his master Veerabahu, and his master's rules are absolute. He refuses to steal from his employer, even if it's just a few coins of tax, and even if it's to cremate his own son. His strict adherence to duty completely overrides his profound, devastating personal grief.
Chandramathi is of course devastated. She's a slave, she has absolutely no money to pay this tax. In a deeply heartbreaking detail from the ancient text, she tries to offer the very last thing she has left in the world, her Mangal Sutra, the sacred thread signifying her marriage. Now, according to the mythology, this sacred thread has a unique divine property. It is visible only to her husband. When Harishchandra sees it, it serves as absolute undeniable confirmation that this is indeed his wife standing right in front of him. He knows exactly who she is, yet he remains utterly steadfast. He refuses to accept the sacred symbol as payment. He tells her she has to go back to her master and find the money legally.
And then the story accelerates into its absolute darkest chapter. While she's out frantically trying to find money for the tax, Chandramathi is cruelly, falsely framed for the murder of a local prince. Without even a proper trial, the local king sentences her to immediate death. And in an agonizing twist of irony, because the local executioner is unavailable, the task is outsourced to the crematorium guard. Yep, Harishchandra is officially ordered by his master to be the executioner of this convicted murderer, who he knows for a fact is his totally innocent wife.
This is it, the ultimate Dharma test, the absolute climax of the narrative. Harishchandra is handed a sword. His wife, the queen he loved, the woman who shared in his unimaginable suffering, kneels before him, falsely condemned. The source material describes the agonizing tension of this moment perfectly. For Harishchandra, his duty as a servant is to execute the king's orders without question. His commitment to truth and duty leaves absolutely no room for personal rebellion. With a heavy heart prioritizing cosmic law above his own soul, he tightly closes his eyes, raises the heavy sword high into the air, and prepares to strike down his own wife. But the blade never falls. At the exact microsecond before the execution, the heavens suddenly open up. Lord Shiva, along with Lord Indra and a whole host of other deities, suddenly manifest right there in the crematorium, physically stopping the execution. The cosmic test is officially over. The gods are entirely satisfied, and they are completely astounded by Harishchandra's unshakable character. Think about it. He had faced the absolute worst the universe could possibly throw at him, the loss of his wealth, his family, his freedom, and almost his own humanity, yet he never once compromised his integrity.
The resolution here is just as grand as the tragedy was deep. The sage Vishwamitra appears and, to his credit, gracefully accepts total defeat. He admits that Harishchandra's commitment to truth is indeed totally unbreakable. The gods, incredibly moved by the king's sacrifice, reward him instantly. They breathe life right back into the young boy, Loa-Thiasia, resurrecting him from the dead. And by divine decree, Vishwamitra returns the entire empire. The king's wealth, his status, and his family are completely restored to him, making him far more glorious than he ever was before.
So what are we really meant to take away from this profound narrative? First off, it's really about that unwavering adherence to Dharma, doing what is right and fulfilling your duties regardless of the personal cost. Second, It enforces this powerful belief that while truth might bring some pretty unimaginable short-term hardships, it ultimately leads to victory and spiritual salvation. This is exactly why even thousands of years later, he is universally remembered as Satya Harishchandra, Harishchandra of the truth. His name is literally the gold standard for integrity.
Which brings us to our final thought, and a question I really want to leave you with. In our modern world, a world full of gray areas, shifting morals, little white lies, and constant, everyday compromises, what does Harishchandra's absolute, rigid commitment to truth actually teach us? Is such a standard even possible today? Or is it merely a beautiful, kind of terrifying ideal? I hope this explainer has given you a deeper appreciation for this ancient epic, and maybe even sparked a little reflection on your own personal boundaries of truth. Thank you so much for joining me to explore the incredible legacy of King Harishchandra. Keep seeking the truth, and I'll see you in the next explainer.